I am Deck Cadet Chandler Sponay, and I am about to tackle on Marple Annex 1, 2, 3, and 4. So, Marple Annex 1 Regulation for the Prevention of Pollution by Oil. This regulation was adopted on 2nd October 1983 to control and prevent any oil discharge from ship, intentionally or accidentally. It comprises of 11 chapters, which together contains 47 regulations. So, Chapter 1 gives a general description of Marple Annex 1 and consists of 5 regulations which explains the application of this chapter in different types of ship along with the definition of different terminologies which are used in the chapter. This regulation may not apply to all ships, hence a separate section of exceptions and exemptions is also provided. It, it also explains the conditions where the administrator may allow alternative fittings, materials, appliances, etc. to be installed on ships to fulfill this annex. Chapter 2 deals with surveys deals with surveys and certification requirements for oil tanker ships of 150 gross tonnage and other ships of 400 gross tonnage and comprises of 5 regulations. Regulation 6 describes the requirements for the different surveys to comply with MARPOL Annex 1. Regulation 7 provides a term to issue or endorse the IOPP certificate to the ship post successful survey by the appropriate administration. Regulation 8 also describes how to issue or endorse the certificates by another contracting government, followed by Regulation 9, which tells them to form the certificate including languages such as English or official language of issuing countries. Regulation 10 explains the duration of validity certificates that provide timelines for renewal certificates. Regulation 11 terms the authority of port state control under Annex 1 to inspect the ship for compliance. Chapter 3 deals with the requirements of machinery spaces for all ships and lists down the requirements under the Regulation 12 to 17 so that the engine room and the other machinery spaces are compliant with MARPOL Annex 1. Regulation 12 explains the requirement of storage tanks for oil residues produced on all types of the ships due to machinery operations and method to dispose oil residue. It further provides details to protect the fuel oil tanks for ships having fuel oil capacity of 600 cubic meters and above. Regulation 13 describes the requirement for standard discharge connection on a ship to dispose oil residue from sludge and bilge tanks. Regulation 14 the requirements of oil filtration equipment on board ship for discharge engine, room bilges, or ballast water from fuel oil tanks is given in regulation followed by Regulation 15, which restricts the discharge of treated bilges in special areas. Regulation 17 lists down the need for a compliant oil record book for machinery space in oil tankers of 150 gross tonnage and above and other ships of 400 gross tonnage and above. Chapter 4 deals with the requirements of cargo areas in oil tanker ship listing down various regulations from regulations 18 to 36. Chapter 5 describes how to prevent pollution by which can arise from oil pollution incident. Regulation 37, which lists the SOPEP or Shipboard Oil Pollution Emergency Plan, provides details. Chapter 6 lists the requirements for the reception facilities to which the ships will dispose the oily beach sludge under Regulation 38, providing the details of the facility outside and inside the special areas. Chapter 7 provides the special requirement for the fixed or floating platform to comply with Annex 1 of MARPOL with Regulation 39. Chapter 8, which deals with the prevention of pollution which may happen during cargo oil in between tankers at sea, also known as ship-to-ship transfers. Ship-to-ship transfer. It comprises of three regulations from 40 to 42. Chapter 9, which carries detail the special requirement for the use of carriage of oils in the Antarctica area within the Regulation 43. Chapter 10 deals with the verification of compliance with the provision of a convention under Regulation 44 and 45, providing details of the application and process verification of compliance. Chapter 11 lists down the important requirement on international code for ships operating in polar waters under Regulation 46 and 47. Regulation 46 lists down the definition for this annex, followed by Regulation 47 for application and requirement for ships sailing in polar waters. MARPOL Annex 2, Regulation for the Control of Pollution by Noxious Liquid Substance in Bulk. This annex was adopted on 6th of April 1987, which deals with the control and prevention of pollution due to noxious liquid substances in bulk. Intentionally or accidentally, it comprises of 10 chapters, which together contains 22 regulations. Chapter 1 gives general details on MARPOL Annex 2, which consists of 5 regulations, providing the definition of different terminologies which used in the chapter and explains the application of this chapter in different types of ships. The regulation may not be applicable to all types of ships, hence, a separate section of exceptions and exemptions is also provided. It also explains the conditions for the administrator may allow alternative fittings, materials, appliances, etc. to be installed on ships to fulfill this annex. Chapter 2 provides details on different categories of noxious liquid substance under Regulation 6. Chapter 3 lists down the need for service and certification with 4 regulation from Regulation 7 to 10. Regulation 7 deals with the survey and certification needed by chemical tankers following the provision of the International Bulk Code Chemical Code or IBC code. Regulation 8 the need for different surveys for the ships carrying noxious liquid substances in bulk followed by issuing and endorsing of the certificate under Regulation 9. The duration and validity of the certificate are provided in Regulation 10. Chapter 4 specifies the design, constructions, arrangement, and equipment for ships carrying noxious liquid in bulk cargo in Regulation 11, followed by Regulation 12, which provides the details of pumping, piping, unloading, arrangement, and slop tanks. Chapter 5 carries three regulations from 13 to 15 for providing the details of operational discharge of residues of noxious liquid substance. Regulation 13 lists the need for control of discharge of noxious liquid substance residues. Regulation 14 and 15 provide the details, procedures, and arrangement manual and cargo record book which needs to be filled by ship's officers. Chapter 6, which consists of Regulation 16, describes the role of government and authorized parties such as port state control and measures of control to check, survey, and assess ships to carry the cargo under MARPOL Annex 2. Chapter 7 deals with prevention of pollution arising from incident involving noxious liquid substances and consists of Regulation 17, giving the details of shipboard pollution emergency plan for noxious liquid substance. Chapter 8 lists the requirement for the reception facilities which the ship can dispose of the residues and mixtures generated from noxious liquid substances under Regulation 38, providing details of the facility and terminal loading and arrangements. Chapter 9 deals with the verification of compliance with the provision of this convention under Regulation 8, 19, and 20, proving, providing details of the application and the process for the verification of compliance. Chapter 10 lists down the important requirement on the International Code for ships operating in polar waters. Under Regulation 21 and 22, Regulation 21 lists down the definition of the annex followed by Regulation 22 for application requirement for the ships of sailing in polar waters. MARPOL Annex 3 Regulation for the prevention of pollution by harmful substances carried at sea in package form. This annex deals with the substances which are hazardous in nature and carried in packaged cargo. The identification of such material is provided in the IMDG code, The Marple Annex 3 came into force on 1st of July 1992 and comprised of two chapters containing 11 regulations, in which Chapter 1 gives a general details on Marple Annex 3 and consists of 9 regulations. Regulation 1 and 2 explaining the definitions of different terminologies which are used in the chapter and application of this chapter in different types of ships which are carrying hazardous goods. Regulation 3 and 4 list down the requirement of packaging and marking labeling of the packages carrying IMDG cargoes. Regulation 5 provides the details for the documentation which are needed by the ship which is carrying hazardous material under MARPOL Annex 3. The storage requirement and quantity limitations for carrying harmful substances in bulk are provided under Regulation 6 and 7. Regulation 8 lists down the exceptions which a ship carrying harmful cargo in bulk can have under various circumstances. The authorization of port state control on operational requirement of ships carrying such substances under MARPOL Annex 3 is listed in Regulation 9. Chapter 2 deals with the verification and compliance for the provision of this convention, providing details of the application and processes for the verification of compliance under Regulation 10 and 11. MARPOL Annex 4 Prevention for the Regulation for the Prevention of Pollution by Sewage from Ships entered into force on 27th of September 2003. This annex focuses on prevention of sewage pollution from ships. It has 7 chapters comprising of 18 regulations. Chapter 1 gives a general description about MARPOL Annex 4 and consists of 3 regulations, which explains the definitions of different terminologies which are used in the chapter and application this chapter in different types of ships. The regulation may not be applicable to all ships, hence separate section of exceptions is also provided. Chapter 2 lists down the need for service and certification with 5 regulations from Regulation 4 to 8. Regulation 4 deals with service to be done on ships implicated by this annex. Regulation 4 and 5 provide the details for the issue of endorsement of certificates by the administration and by other government. Regulation 7 and 8 gives details, form, duration, and validity of the sewage pollution prevention certificate. Chapter T. Chapter 3 provides the need of having equipment and control sewage discharge from the ship. Regulation 9. Under this chapter provides details of sewage requirement on ships followed by Regulation 10 and 11 for having standard sewage discharge connection to transfers to sewage to port facilities and discharge in the sewage at sea within outside special areas. Chapter 4 consists of 2 regulations, which are 12 and 13, with the details of the reception qualities requirement. Regulation 12 provides the details to the government agencies regarding the receptions or the passenger ships in special areas. Chapter 5, which consists of Regulation 14, describes the role of government and authorized parties such as port state control on measures to control, check, service, and assess the ship under MARPOL Annex 4. Chapter 6 deal with the verification of compliance with the provision of this convention, providing details of the application and the process for the verification of compliance under Regulation 15 and 16. Chapter 7 lists down the important requirement on international code for ships operating in polar waters under Regulation 17 and 18. Regulation 17 lists down the definition for this annex followed by Regulation 18 for application and requirement for the ship sailing polar waters.